The battlefield was still echoing with the sounds of chaos. Smoke rose in thick black columns covering the horizon like a dark curtain. The ground was broken and torn apart by explosions, metal fragments scattered across it like sharp reminders of the violence that had taken place. In the middle of it all lay a human soldier, his uniform covered with dust and ash, his body bearing the marks of the battle. He was still breathing, though every breath seemed heavy, and his chest moved with effort. His fellow soldiers spotted him and rushed forward, their boots crunching over rubble as they carried him out from under the broken remains of a destroyed wall. His condition looked worse than anything they had seen before. His arms were twisted. At strange angles, his legs bore swelling bruises, and every movement of his body sent a ripple of pain across his face. Yet there was no cry of agony, no desperate plea for help. He simply clenched his jaw, tightened his fists, and remained silent. To those around him, it seemed impossible that he was still conscious, let alone aware of what was happening. The squad wasted no time. With careful hands, they lifted him onto a stretcher and carried him toward the nearest Allied medical station. This was not an ordinary field hospital. Since a recent truce, the aliens they once fought beside had agreed to lend their advanced technology to heal both species. The medical center glowed with strange lights, its walls made from smooth materials that seemed alive. As soon as the soldier was brought in, alien physicians in long robes of silver and blue hurried forward. Their tall figures bent over him, their large eyes scanning his condition even before he was connected to their machines. One of them gently raised a hand, signaling to the human squad to step back. "We will examine him now," the alien said in a calm, low voice. Though the language was foreign, translators allowed everyone to understand. The stretcher was guided onto a platform that rose softly into the air and slid into the heart of their scanning device. A shimmering light passed over the soldier's body, reading deep into his bones, muscles, and organs. The machine hummed, and then the results appeared on a large screen. The alien doctors froze, their expressions filled with disbelief. They leaned closer, rechecking the images again and again, whispering among themselves in their own tongue. The lead physician, whose forehead bore the marks of wisdom and age, finally spoke. His voice was heavy with shock as he translated the findings. 17 bones. Fractured. The words sent a wave of silence across the room. Every human soldier watching gasped, even among them, battle-hardened as they were. The number was staggering. To suffer 17 broken bones and still be alive, still be conscious, was unheard of. The alien physicians exchanged worried looks. To them, their kind would have slipped into a coma at such an injury. Most would not have survived the first few minutes, let alone held on for hours after the battle. The lead physician pointed at the scan, highlighting the breaks in the arms, the cracks in the ribs, the damage to his legs, and even a hairline fracture running across the skull. "This body," he said softly, "is already beyond what is possible. The pain should have been overwhelming. His mind should not still be awake." The human soldier slowly opened his eyes as though the whispers had reached him. His breathing was rough, and every small motion seemed to cost him effort. One of his comrades leaned close, preparing to comfort him, but the soldier beat him to it. With a faint smile, almost mocking the gravity of the situation, he muttered through dry lips, "No big deal." Those 3 words spread like fire. The room went silent again. The aliens blinked in confusion, their tall forms shifting uncomfortably. Did they hear correctly? Had a being just dismissed 17 broken bones as if it were a scratch? The humans exchanged glances. A mixture of admiration and disbelief etched across their faces. The soldier's words were not born of arrogance. He had been through battles before, through hardships that taught him to carry pain like an old companion. For him, complaining about suffering would not heal it, and admitting fear would not lessen it. He had always believed in walking forward, no matter the weight on his shoulders. And now, even as pain burned through every part of his body, he chose to treat it as nothing more than an obstacle he could endure. The aliens, however, could not comprehend it. One of them leaned toward his colleagues and whispered, "How does he still speak? How can he dismiss this?" Another replied, "It defies all that we know. Our kind would not last a fraction of this." They continued their scans, running deeper tests, trying to find explanations. Perhaps human bodies contained unknown structures, or maybe their nervous systems processed pain differently. But every answer they searched for led them back to the same mystery, the resilience of the human spirit. Meanwhile, the soldier closed his eyes again, breathing slowly, forcing his mind to focus not on the agony, but on the memories of why he fought, the friends he wanted to protect, the world he wanted to defend. He told himself the same thing he always did in such moments. This is just another test, another wall to climb. And so, with 17 broken bones lying on a foreign medical bed, surrounded by astonished allies and comrades, he kept that faint smile on his face, the kind that refused to give pain the victory it desired. The moment marked the beginning of a story that neither species would forget. For the aliens, it was the first time they truly realized the hidden strength within the fragile-looking humans. For his fellow soldiers, it was another reminder of what it meant to stand unbroken, even when broken in body. And for the man himself, it was simply another day of survival, another reason to prove that no matter how many bones snapped, the will to fight would always remain whole. The results of the scan continued to glow on the large screen. Every line, every highlighted mark told the story of how much damage the human soldier's body had taken. 17 fractures across his frame, ribs that had cracked like dry wood under pressure, legs carrying lines of breakage, arms barely held together by muscles and tendons, and that thin but dangerous crack across his skull. For the alien physicians, who were trained in a science far more advanced than human medicine, this was nothing short of terrifying. They stared at the images as though they were looking at the body of someone who should already be dead. The lead alien, a tall figure with silver markings running along, his face turned to the others. His deep voice carried the weight of disbelief. "How can this creature still be awake?" he asked. Another doctor responded with a nervous shake of the head. "By every measure we know, he should have lost consciousness long ago. Perhaps his body is different than ours. Perhaps his nerves do not transmit pain in the same way." The soldier's comrades stood silently at the back of the room, watching with anxious eyes. They were hardened men and women, trained to fight and endure, yet even they could not hide their concern. A fellow soldier whispered, 17 broken bones. And he still smiled. "That's madness." But another shook his head, replying, "That's just him. He always pretends pain doesn't matter. I've seen him patch himself up with his own hands and walk like nothing happened." The alien physicians leaned closer to the soldier, who lay on the glowing medical bed, his body covered in strange lines of light from their scanning device. They expected him to be delirious, to fade in and out of awareness. Yet his eyes followed them, sharp and steady, even though his chest rose and fell heavily. One of the aliens, out of curiosity, asked through the translator, "Do you understand how badly injured you are?" The soldier gave a slight grin, though his lips were dry and cracked. His voice came out low but firm. "You've already told me. 17 bones, that's a number. Pain is just noise. I've lived with worse noise before." The alien tilted his head, puzzled. "Noise? What do you mean?" The soldier closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again, forcing his words through the heaviness in his chest. "Pain is like background noise. If you listen to it, it becomes louder. If you ignore it, it fades. You just focus on what matters more." The room grew quiet again. To the alien doctors, this was beyond comprehension. To them, pain was a force that demanded attention. It crippled their kind, forcing their bodies to shut down until healing took place. But here was a human who treated pain like an annoyance, something to be dismissed rather than feared. The scans completed their process, and the medical team quickly began treatment. Strange instruments hummed as they released beams of energy, gently binding broken bones, aligning them without needing to cut or open the body. Liquids of glowing blue were fed into the soldier's veins, spreading warmth and beginning the work of repairing tissues. Throughout it all, the soldier remained awake, even though the alien doctors offered him a chance to sleep. "We can ease your mind," one said kindly. You will not feel this. But he shook his head. I'll stay awake. Just do what you need to do. This decision puzzled them even further. Why would anyone choose to remain conscious through treatment, especially with so many injuries? The truth was simple to him. Sleep meant vulnerability. As long as he was awake, he was aware of his surroundings, and that gave him control, even in a small way. Word of his condition spread quickly beyond the medical room. Alien guards stationed nearby whispered about the human soldier with 17 broken bones who had not screamed once. Other humans hearing the news felt a surge of pride and disbelief at the same time. Soon it seemed the entire outpost was aware of his situation. Soldiers passing through the halls spoke about it with wide eyes. 17, one would say, and he still told the doctors it's no big deal. Some of the aliens, curious and unsettled, gathered outside the medical chamber, peering in through the glass-like walls. They watched the human's chest rise and fall, watched him grit his teeth while refusing to give in to the pain. To them, he was no longer just another soldier. He was becoming a strange symbol of resilience, a living contradiction to everything they thought they knew about humans. Inside, the treatment continued. Each step repaired another piece of his shattered frame. Bones were guided back into alignment, tissues knitted back together under the glow of alien technology. The process should have been unbearable. In truth, it was. Pain pulsed through his body like fire, but he held onto his calm expression, refusing to let it break him. One alien, younger and less experienced, could not hold back his amazement. He finally asked, "Why do you not cry out? Why do you not show the pain you feel? We know it must be immense." The soldier's eyes shifted to meet the young alien's gaze. For a moment, the room felt heavier, as though everyone was waiting for his answer. Slowly, he said, "Because pain is not the end. If I give in to it, I lose more than my body. I lose myself, and I can't afford to lose. Not here, not now." The words lingered long after he spoke them. The aliens found themselves repeating, them in their minds trying to understand a perspective so different from their own. It was as if the human had built a wall around his spirit that nothing, not even 17 broken bones, could break through. As the treatment neared its end, the lead physician stepped back, studying both the scans and the soldier himself. His expression was no longer just disbelief, it carried respect. He turned to the others and spoke softly. "We thought them fragile. We thought their bodies weak. But perhaps it is not their bodies that matter. Perhaps it is something within them that we cannot measure with any machine." The soldier gave another faint smile at their whispering, though his body trembled with exhaustion. "Told you," he murmured, his voice weak but steady. "No big deal." The aliens looked at one another, unsure whether to see him as reckless or remarkable. But one thing was certain. The story of this human, with 17 broken bones and an unbroken will, would not remain within these walls for long. It would spread, and with it a new understanding of what it meant to be human. The story of the injured human did not remain inside the medical chamber for long. By the next morning, whispers had carried it through every corridor of the joint outpost. Soldiers spoke of it over their meals. Technicians repeated it as they worked on broken machines, and alien guards leaned on their long weapons, murmuring about the fragile-looking creature who had survived what should have ended his life. His name was not even shared widely, but he was already known simply as the human with 17 broken bones. Among the alien warriors, the news stirred mixed emotions. Many of them had grown up believing humans were weak, their bodies too soft, their lifespans too short, their strength too limited to endure true battle. For years, humans had been dismissed as reckless creatures who relied on luck and stubbornness more than skill. But now, those same warriors struggled to fit the story into their beliefs. Some began to admire him, their eyes shining with respect whenever they passed the medical wing. Others felt unsettled, even fearful, wondering what kind of species could call such an injury no big deal. In the barracks, small groups gathered to discuss what they had heard. One alien soldier with emerald-colored skin shook his head, and said, 17 bones broken, and he still speaks as though it is nothing. If that were me, I would not even draw breath. Another replied with a low, thoughtful tone, maybe this is why they are dangerous. They fight as if their bodies do not matter. How can one battle such a people? The human soldiers, on the other hand, were less surprised, though they were amazed by the sheer number of injuries. Many of them understood their comrade's attitude. Around a dimly lit table, one of them leaned forward, saying, "That's him all right. I've seen him limp on a shattered ankle for 2 days before anyone forced him to rest. He doesn't let pain own him." Another soldier smiled faintly, shaking her head. "He'll never admit he's hurting. That's just how he is. Always trying to carry more than he should." Meanwhile, inside the medical room, the alien physicians continued to check on him. They watched with careful eyes as the repair treatments worked, astonished at how quickly his body responded. One of them noted, "His bones are mending faster than expected, though not because of our machines alone. It is as though his body is urging itself forward." Another whispered, "And still he remains awake. Still, he refuses rest." The soldier himself said little. He listened to their quiet voices, sometimes smirking when he caught their worried tones. In his heart, he was not trying to impress anyone. He simply lived by a rule he had carried since childhood. Pain was not a reason to stop. Every ache, every wound, every scar was just proof that he was still alive, and as long as he lived, there was always something worth fighting for. The aliens, however, could not let it go. To them, pain was a signal that demanded attention, a warning that forced their kind to stop before more damage could be done. They could not imagine treating it as something to ignore. To understand, they began to ask questions. One physician, braver than the rest, leaned close to him and asked through the translator, "How can you endure this without breaking? How can you say it is nothing?" The soldier gave a slow, weary smile. His voice came out rough but steady. "Because if I spend my life worrying about pain, I'll never move forward. Pain is just the price of living. If I can keep breathing, then I can keep fighting. That's enough." The alien physician pulled back, shaken by the answer. He had never considered such a thought. To him, life was about comfort, survival, and preservation. To the human, life was about continuing forward no matter the cost. It was a difference that made the alien feel both admiration and unease. As hours turned into days, more aliens came to see him. Some approached cautiously, standing outside the glass walls of the chamber as though observing a rare creature. Others asked to speak with him, their voices carrying genuine curiosity. One tall warrior with scales that shimmered like metal asked bluntly, "Are all humans like you?" The soldier chuckled faintly, wincing at the pain the movement caused. "No, some are stronger, some are weaker, but we all learn to keep going. That's what makes us human." The alien warrior lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect in his culture. "Then your people are not weak as we believed. You are something else entirely." Not all reactions were respectful. In a corner of the outpost, a group of alien officers spoke in hushed, troubled voices. One of them said, "If they can endure this, how can we ever truly defeat them if war returns?" Another added, "We signed peace, but perhaps it was not their weapons we should have feared. Perhaps it is their will." Such whispers spread almost as quickly as the tale itself. What had begun as a medical case was becoming something larger, a symbol. The human soldier, who had dismissed his pain with 3 simple words, was now forcing 2 species to see each other differently. To the aliens, he was a puzzle that defied reason. To the humans, he was a reminder of their own strength, proof that even when broken, they were not beaten. Inside the medical room, the soldier finally allowed himself to rest for longer periods. But even in sleep, his body shifted as though ready to rise at any moment. The aliens observed him quietly, recording details, trying to learn from every heartbeat. One younger alien whispered to another, "He is teaching us without even trying." And so the days passed, but the story did not fade. Instead, it grew. It became something told in every corner of the outpost, how a man with 17 broken bones had smiled and said, "No big deal." For some, it was a tale of courage. For Others, it was a warning. But for all, it was unforgettable. The soldier was healing, though slowly. The alien treatments worked on his bones, guiding them back together. But the real challenge was not his body. It was the mystery of his endurance. Every alien doctor who entered the room left with more questions than answers. To them, it was not just about how a human could survive 17 broken bones. It was about how he could dismiss it as if it were nothing. They decided to ask him directly. On the fourth day, a group of alien physicians stood around his bed. One of them, an elder with long lines etched across his skin like cracks in stone, leaned closer and asked, "We wish to understand. What gives you such strength? Why do you treat pain as if it does not matter?" The soldier, his chest wrapped in healing bands of light, looked at them with tired eyes. For a moment he said nothing. Then he gave a faint chuckle. "Strength? I don't think of it as strength. It's just living. Where I come from, everyone learns to live with pain." The aliens tilted their heads, puzzled. One of them asked, "You mean your people suffer often?" "Yes," the soldier replied softly. "Not just in war, even in peace. We face sickness, hunger, loss, disasters. Life has never been easy for us. But we keep going. That's what makes us human." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. In their world, suffering was rare. Their technology, their medicine, even their traditions had spared them from many hardships. They had never considered that pain itself could shape a species. Seeing their confusion, the soldier continued, "When I was a child, I broke my arm falling from a tree. It hurt so badly I thought I would never move it again. But my family told me it would heal. They said scars and breaks are reminders that you survived. Later in training, I learned to push through exhaustion, hunger, cold nights. Every time I thought I could not go on, I discovered I could. Pain is not the end, it's a teacher." The aliens leaned in, listening carefully. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight none of them could ignore. One younger alien finally asked, "But why endure? If life is so difficult, why not surrender?" The soldier's eyes grew sharper at the question. "Because there is always something worth enduring for. Family, friends, people who depend on you. If I give up, I'm not the only one who suffers. Others will too, so I keep going, not just for myself, but for them." The aliens fell silent. The idea of enduring pain for the sake of others was not foreign to them, but hearing it spoken so calmly by someone with 17 broken bones gave it a power they had never felt before. News of these conversations spread quickly. Alien warriors began to gather near the medical room, not to whisper in fear anymore, but to listen. Some even asked questions of their own, treating the soldier less like a patient and more like a teacher. He answered simply, never trying to impress them, never exaggerating his suffering. He told them stories of humans surviving storms, of explorers crossing frozen lands, of families rebuilding after fires and floods. He spoke of how pain connected them all, reminding them that survival was not just about strength, but about refusing to give up. At night, when the medical wing grew quiet, he would sometimes stare at the ceiling, his body aching despite the treatments. He was not without pain. In truth, every moment was heavy with it. But he reminded himself that pain was proof he was still alive, and being alive meant he still had a purpose. The aliens began to see him differently. To some, he became a living symbol of courage. To others, a puzzle that reshaped how they viewed humanity. But to the soldier himself, he was simply a man doing what needed to be done, just as anyone else would in his place. The lesson, however, had already taken root. Aliens who once saw humans as fragile now saw them as resilient. They began to wonder if perhaps strength was not measured by the absence of pain, but by the choice to endure it. By the time the soldier's bones had begun to mend, the entire outpost knew his story. It was no longer just a tale of survival. It had become something larger, a bridge between two species that had once been enemies. The aliens visited him not only to study his recovery, but also to speak with him, to hear more about his people. They asked questions about human history, about times when humanity had nearly broken but still carried on. He told them about long wars in the past, about plagues that had taken millions, about disasters that wiped away cities, and how even after all that, people still rose again. "Every time we fall," he said, his voice steady though his body remained weak, "we stand up again. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it costs us dearly, but we always rise. That is who we are." The aliens listened in silence. For them, the idea that a people could grow stronger through suffering was difficult to grasp. Yet they could not deny what they had seen with their own eyes. A human, with 17 broken bones, alive, speaking and refusing to surrender. His comrades also visited him often. They sat by his side, telling him news from the front, laughing quietly about old memories, reminding him that he was not alone. To them, he was not just a symbol, he was their brother in arms. They admired him, but they also worried for him, knowing how much pain he carried behind his calm words. The soldier never asked for praise. Whenever someone called him strong, he shook his head. "I'm just doing what anyone would. We all have this in us. I'm not special. I just refuse to stop." But to the aliens, he was special. He had shown them something they had never understood before, that true strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing it and continuing forward. It was a lesson their kind had forgotten, and now, through him, they were beginning to learn it again. As the days passed, his body grew stronger. The alien machines knit his bones back together and the bruises slowly faded. He was not whole yet, but he was healing. And every day when someone asked him how he was, he gave the same answer with the same faint smile. "No big deal." Those words began to spread like a saying among the soldiers. Human troops repeated them before going into battle, using them as a reminder not to fear hardship. Even some aliens, once skeptical, began to echo the phrase, half in admiration, half in wonder. "No big deal," they said, whenever they faced a challenge, remembering the human who had taught them those words. By the time he was ready to walk again, supported by careful hands, the soldier had become more than just a man recovering from injuries. He had become a bridge between two worlds. His suffering had created respect where there was once doubt, and his spirit had inspired warriors who once thought humans were weak. The war was not over, and battles still lay ahead. But in that moment, something had changed. Both humans and aliens knew that no matter how many bones could break, there was something inside the human spirit that could not be measured by scans or machines, something unshakable. And so long after the medical lights dimmed and the soldier took his first steps again, his story remained. The tale of a man who endured 17 broken bones and smiled through the pain became a legend. To him, it was just survival. To others, it was proof that courage was not the absence of suffering, but the will to keep standing in spite of it. "No big deal," he had said. And yet, to everyone who heard the story, it was the biggest deal of all.